Welcome to our video. This is Trevor Chilton from Techo Siglo Venti Uno. Today we're going to visit one of our jobs from this year to sort of emphasize what it is we're talking about in the chapter on roofing in the ebook. And as the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So here we see a house that had received massive damages from a roof that was a whopping 5 years old. We entered on the scene with extensive damage. This whole repair job was over $10,000 in a roof that's only 5 years old. This is really quite insane. And as is typical, it was a combination of bad materials as well as bad installation, and particularly these roofing materials being a type of roof cladding here known as zinc teha that is extremely common, except the instructions for installing it are wrong. The manufacturer is wrong. It doesn't work. And I've inspected 4 of these roofs. So that's pretty safe bet. And the pictorial evidence in the background here kind of demonstrates that something is really rotten in the state of Denmark. Then add to that the gutters. The entire industry in this country has some strange idea that water runs uphill rather than the other way around. We'll get to the pictures here as the comparisons between what was on the house versus what we replaced it with, because there was no way of fixing the old. It's just, a design flaw that simply can't be made to work. But anyway, over that period of years, you can see the eaves, most of the eaves were destroyed by constantly getting wet. Even going into, this was a waterfall out of a valley that completely wiped out this whole ceiling area here. Anyways, it was pretty universal throughout the, especially this particular side of the house here. It was everywhere, but nothing like being consistent. At any rate, what I say to people always is look at an older home to find out how things are really working versus you don't look at a new home to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Let's go look at what's been done and see how it has panned out for the owners. And as you can see here, it hasn't panned out especially well. And you would think that contractors that have lived and born in the tropics would have a little more respect for the amount of rain that falls here and the fact that you gotta build a good roof. Now, the first thing with this roof, it's too low of a slope to begin with. It's just asking for trouble when you get down below a 212 slope. Nothing, if you can't get the water off the roof fast enough, or certainly as fast as possible, it's just going to hang around and look for places to leak. This area here was caused by an internal gutter, which is never a good idea, and certainly when you do it, you've got to do it right, which they certainly hadn't, as I think the evidence would clearly indicate. And very slow and consuming. When you get concrete wet like that, the stucco caps separate, and then to get it all off and to completely redo it, a lot of work, a lot of time. So when somebody says low maintenance concrete, I just say nonsense. Now, when we get into the roofing area, this thing looked like Minnesota, the land of many lakes, because all the dents over the roof had from guys walking on it, and the roof was never adequately supported for this type of tin. They had a 90 centimeter spacing, and it needs to be 45. Hence, people walk and they put dents in all over the roof, so you're lucky if you get out of the installation phase. Then you come back, as we see here, 5 years later, after guys have been walking from the cable company, electric, whoever's been up there. It just looks like a disaster zone, as this would certainly indicate. Look at even the leaves hanging around to sit around in the lake because stuff wasn't washing off the roof properly. Just generally really insane how this worked out for the owners. To say the least. And the best of all, the valley. This thing is too shallow and too narrow. They brought the tin in, there was no way for it to wash out and the water would come up. Here's the culprit. The valley pan is, we replaced this with one triple this size. It just couldn't handle the volume of water. This is the tropics, for crying out loud. You cannot get away with this kind of nonsense. Then we get into having a look at the actual eave trough itself, how much rust it was in only 5 years. Stay away from galvanized eaves troughing. You get the proper baked enamel finish. It's way cheaper by the time you paint. Now the gutters. Here's what I was saying. On the right is the old gutter where the outside edge is higher than the inside, whereas ours the other way around, where the inside edge is higher than the out. So if when the gutter fills up, the water goes in the garden, not into your house. And yet this is the way the whole industry does it. Incredible. Now here you see, when we had the roof off, we put in insulation and added the reflective foil to cool down the house, because it certainly was not cool. And here we have the roof cladding going on. Definitely not my favorite, but as metal roofs, at least this stuff doesn't leak. And you see there's the new gutter done, triple the volume and left wide open so that the debris would wash out of it. Anyways, it is the finished job, and results were there, and we fixed the problem, even as necessary as it should have been. But they're an example of what bad roofing is.